Hello everybody. So in today's video we are going to go over some vocabulary and terminology that you're going to need during this chapter in order to be successful. So we are going to start with some vocabulary that relates to graphing in algebra. The first term that you're going to need to know is x-axis. The x-axis on a graph is the horizontal number line that helps to divide the graph into sections. On this graph, the x-axis would be this horizontal line right here. On a graph, the y-axis is the vertical number line that helps to divide the graph into sections. So on this graph, the y-axis would be right here. When we look at a graph and we use the x and the y-axis to divide the graph into sections, we see that there are four main areas. There's the upper right, upper left, and lower right. We call each of those areas a quadrant. So when we look at this graph, we say that there are four quadrants. These are the four sections of the graph. Now, in order to talk more easily about these quadrants, we give them numbers. So the upper right quadrant is called the number 1, which we usually use Roman numerals for. Then the upper left is the quadrant 2, which again we usually use Roman numerals for. Then quadrant 3, and then quadrant 4. You can think about this as being in a circle. So we start in the upper right and we move in a circle around the graph to number the quadrants. Finally, the point on the graph where all graphing starts is going to be called the origin. You can think about the origin as being the original. It's where we start. This is the point 0, 0, and it is where the x and the y-axis meet. On this graph, the origin would be right here at 0, 0. When we're graphing, we graph what are called ordered pairs. So this right here, where we have a parentheses and then we have a number and another number, x and y, is called an ordered pair. Each number in the ordered pair gives us a direction to move when we're graphing a point. The first number in the ordered pair is called the x-coordinate. The x-coordinate tells us to move left or right by that many spaces. The second number in an ordered pair is the y-coordinate. The y-coordinate also tells us to move, but it tells us to move up or down in the direction of the y-axis. So if I was to graph the point -2, 4, the -2 would be the x-coordinate and the 4 would be the y-coordinate. So I would start at the origin and I would go left 2 spaces, and then I would go up 4 spaces. And the location of my point would be here. I like to remember how to follow those instructions by remembering that first you have to walk into the elevator. In other words, you need to go sideways. Then you can travel to a new floor. So then you're going to go up or down. That helps me remember that first number tells me to go sideways, left or right, and the second number tells me to go up or down. So let's take a look at some example problems. The first few example problems, the directions say write the ordered pair that corresponds to the points A, B, C, and D. So we know, because it's asking us to write an ordered pair, that each one of these points is going to have two numbers that are inside of a parentheses with a comma in between. Now, it's very important to pay attention to the notation here. If you don't have a parentheses, then it's not truly an ordered pair. So you really have to be careful to get that, make sure your notation is correct. For point A, first I would go right 3 spaces, and then I would go down 2 spaces. For point B, first I would go left 2 spaces, and then up 1 space. So I would write -2, 1. For point C, I wouldn't go right or left at all. So I would put a 0 for my x coordinate, and then I would go up 2 spaces. And for point D, first I would go left 4 spaces. So I would have, 3 spaces. So -3, and then up 4 spaces. So then I would put a 4. In the next example problems, it says graph the following points and then identify the quadrant in which they are located. The first point I'm asked to graph is -4, 4. So first I would go left 4 spaces to get into the elevator, then I would go up to the 4th floor. The quadrant there would be quadrant 2. Point B would be right 3 spaces to go into the elevator and down 2 floors. The quadrant there would be quadrant 4. And point C, first I would go left or right 0 spaces, and then I would go down to the 4th floor. So my answer would be for quadrant, because it's not really in one of the quadrants, we would just name the axis on which it is located. It's on the y-axis. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you for some practice.